Well, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to rage across the world, a stigma has been built around that virus that many people are calling coronaphobia. That's why I sat down with Nine Health expert Dr. Payal Kohli to talk about coronaphobia and to talk more about how we can break that stigma. Dr. Kohli, thank you so much for joining us again. We're so excited to talk to you more about everything that's been going on. First of all, how have you been? How are you doing?
I've been good. I've been hanging in there. How about you?
Good. Doing all right. We're the same, hanging in there, working from home. It's all been crazy, but we're doing okay. So today we're talking about something called coronaphobia, and I'm so interested in this topic. So let's start by you just telling us what that is.
So, coronaphobia is a broad umbrella term that really encompasses two different types of irrational fears. So, the first is an irrational fear of contracting coronavirus to the point that it's interfering with your daily functioning. So, these are the people that are afraid to leave their homes or afraid to go out because they're so worried about contracting the virus. The second part of coronaphobia is really avoidance of those people who've had coronavirus and recovered. So it's again driven by the fear that you might contract the coronavirus, but it's extreme avoidance of anyone who may have had coronavirus to the point where it's interfering with your interpersonal relationships.
It's interesting too that you bring this up because this is something that I feel like a lot of us have felt. I know that even for people that may have gotten a test, it almost seems like there's some sort of stigma behind it. So is there like a science behind why we're feeling this way?
You're absolutely right. There's a real stigma about the coronavirus. And the real reason that we're feeling this way is, if you think back to the HIV when it first came on the scene, it was the fear of the unknown. We don't know how it spread. We don't know what's driving it. We don't know what the consequences are. And that created that same sort of stigma. And that's really what's driving it right now, or at least in the earlier part of the pandemic was driving it, because we didn't know much about this new virus. But I really want to reassure people because all that has changed now. We know how this virus spreads. We know what the complications of the virus are. We know how to treat it, and we know how long people are infectious for. So being armed with the scientific information, I think, can really help us to dispel coronaphobia that's penetrating our community. And in fact, those people that have had the virus and recovered from it are actually less likely to bring it to you if they're no longer infectious because they've got antibodies, so they probably have a low risk of catching it again.
Okay, yeah, that completely makes sense. So many of us, of course, don't want to be those kinds of people who are stigmatizing this, right? So you mentioned, of course, learning more and making sure that we're staying aware of what the new information is. Are there other ways that we can make sure that we're, not doing this, that we're not stigmatizing others?
I think it's really about humanizing the people who've had coronavirus. So remember, these are our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors. These are people in our community, just like us, that have had this suffering. And to empathize with that suffering and really try to recognize that we as a community need to change our stance on this condition. So if we continue to propagate this, we continue to be fearful of them, all we're going to do is prolong their suffering and have more pain associated with what they've already been through. So the science can help us really start to change our mindset, and then we have to help each other recognize when it's occurring so that we can really change the trajectory of this condition.
So important. All right, Dr. Kohli, thank you so much for teaching us more and really helping us to become a little bit less of a stigmatized community and really try to be a lot more personable when it comes to this pandemic.
Thank you for having me.